Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome everyone to this afternoon's meeting of the Senate Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections. Madam Secretary, please note we do have a quorum. Please mark Minority Leader and Majority Leader present when they arrive. I want us to start with opening the hearing on AJR 1 of the 81st session. We're very fortunate to have Senator Titus with us, and thank you, Senator, for presenting AJR 1 of the 81st session.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for being willing to hear this bill. I am Senator Dr. Robin Titus. I represent Senate District 17, and most of you may know that was Senator Settlemyer's seat, but my seat looks nothing like Senator Settlemyer's does, because I represent now all of Douglas County, all of Lyon County, all of Churchill County, all of Mineral County, all of Esmeralda County, and a little bit of Nye County, specifically Tonopah. I appreciate you very much being willing to hear AJR 1 from the 81st session. Frankly, it is feeling so good to be here today because it's the fourth time I have presented this bill. All of those you know how things work in changing our Constitution. A resolution has to pass both houses in its exact language twice, 2 separate years, and then it gets to be, or 2 separate sessions, and then gets to go on the ballot. So this is the final step for me before, and hopefully you will accept this bill. The resolution is pretty straightforward. It changes 4 words in the Nevada Constitution. And some of you may wonder, why do we need to change the Constitution to address 4 words? Well, let me tell you what these 4 words are: insane, blind, deaf, and dumb. Those words are found in Section 1, Article 13 of our Nevada Constitution. This section requires the state to care for certain populations with disabilities who or suffer from mental illness. The whole section reads like this. Section 1, institutions for insane, blind, deaf, and dumb to be fostered and supported by the state. Institutions for the benefit of the insane, blind, deaf, and dumb, and such other benevolent institutions as the good public may require, shall be fostered and supported by the state, subject to regulations as may be prescribed by law. I am aware that when the Nevada Constitution was written, different terminologies were used to describe persons with disabilities or mental illness. However, more than 158 years after Nevada was admitted to the Union, it is time to give these words a critical look. We should change them to contemporary language that is not deemed to be discriminatory or narrow. I've proposed that we revise this terminology in the following manner. We change the word institution to entities, from the insane to persons with significant mental illness, from the blind to persons who are blind or visually impaired, and from the deaf and dumb to persons who are deaf or hard of hearing. The idea to change the language in our Constitution came from one of our constituents, my constituents, Mr. Andrew Campbell, who will be joining us shortly via Zoom today. He works at Churchill County High School as an English teacher and has taught special education. When he brought the issue to my attention, most of his students had severe to profound disabilities. Mr. Campbell used to teach at the Washington State School for the Deaf. He also taught American Sign Language as an after-school program, as well as a class at Western Nevada Community College. He is very much aware of the needs of persons who are deaf or hard of hearing. He describes them as smart, dedicated folks in our society who work in banks, teachers, engineers. His own grandfather, who worked in the aviation industry, designed aircrafts in the 1930s and belonged to the deaf community. His grandfather was one of Boeing's first 100 employees that designed an aircraft. And I'm grateful for Mr. Campbell, who brought this to my attention. Let me give you a little background and a little bit more details on the amendment. You have the one-pager in front of you. I want to start with the new term to start with persons. We must stop categorizing people who suffer from an illness or disability by putting them an emphasis on their illness or disability. For example, the blind or the deaf. Instead, these are individuals that have an illness or a disability, but first and foremost, they're persons. Second, we are changing the term from institutions to entities, per the recommendation of our Department of Health and Human Services. Third, calling a person who has a hearing loss dumb in our own Constitution is plainly offensive. This term must go. Additionally, many people in our society are not completely deaf. Many suffer from different degrees of hearing loss. The definition in the Constitution is too narrow, and therefore I think it should say persons who are deaf or hard of hearing. Insane is another one of those derogatory terms that I would recommend replacing. We know that words matter when you stigmatize individuals with such a term. It may lead to negative results in the long run. Research has actually shown that stigmatizing persons with a significant mental illness may actually create more barriers for them. They may face discrimination, prejudice when renting homes, applying for jobs, or actually accessing mental health services. Stigmatize people who are less likely to seeking the help they need or the treatment that they need. Using the term insane in our Constitution for people who suffer from a mental illness helps to perpetuate the stigma. Therefore, it should be replaced with a more dignified term, persons with significant mental illness. Finally, blind is not necessarily a discriminating term, but I think it is too narrow. If a person is blind, he or she may suffer a complete or nearly complete vision loss. However, this term does not include any of the people who have visual impairment that may cause difficulty with daily activities. Persons with visual impairments may not be able to walk or read without adaptive training or their use of assistive technology. Contemporary training and assistive technology are for all people who have some kind of visual impairment. Therefore, this language should be updated, and I propose the term persons who are blind. With the chair's permission, I will now give Mr. Campbell, hopefully we have him a chance to give a few marks if he has been able to sign on.
Thank you very much, Senator Titus. And I got a message that the Zoom link, that there seems to be a little bit of an issue with the Zoom link, and perhaps Mr. Campbell will try calling in via the phone. So I will ask broadcasting if he's on the phone.
Yeah, and if he's on the phone, that's great. If not, I can finish remarks, but he has such a special story.
I think that we're trying to get him connected. Broadcasting, is Mr. Campbell on the phone line, who is part of Senator Titus's presentation on AJR 1?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Campbell, if you are on the line, please press *9 on your phone so that it raises your hand. Once again, Mr. Campbell, if you're on the line, please press *9 so that we know that you are on the line. Chair, there's no response.
All right, thank you very much. Senator Titus, if you wouldn't mind continuing, and if we can get Mr. Campbell on later, we'll certainly allow him to speak.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I would just close because I've given over the specific details on just the backside of this, that one line that we want to change in our Constitution. And I believe we must do a better job in making sure that we do not discriminate and stigmatize persons with disabilities or mental illness in our laws. A first step is to ensure that none of this language, discriminatory language or derogatory language, is in our Constitution. AJR 1 will provide for that. Please keep in mind, though, that this resolution is just a step. It will not apply to NRS. For example, if you do a simple search in our law library on the legislative website, you'll find 67 hits with the term insane. I hope there will be another opportunity to clean up some of our statutes as well. I urge you to support AJR 1 to end the stigmatization of our citizens in the Nevada Constitution. I'm happy to answer questions, and again, I'm honored that this is the fourth time and a final hurdle for me to getting this on the ballot. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Titus. Members, any questions for Senator Titus? No, I'm not seeing any questions. And right now I'll go to support, and then when we get through support, I'll go back to broadcasting and see if Mr. Campbell has called in. Is there anyone here in Carson City who'd like to speak in support of AJR 1 of the 81st session? You're not seeing anyone here in Carson City. I would like to go to the phone lines.
Mr. Campbell, if you're present on the Zoom call, raise your hand. Press *9 to raise your hand in the Zoom call now. Once again, Mr. Campbell, if you're present in the Zoom call, press *9 to raise your hand. Chair, we still seem to be having trouble contacting Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Broadcasting. Is there anyone else on the phone lines who wishes to speak in support of AJR 1?
To testify in support of AJR 1, press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Hi, there are 3 people here on the phone line, the same phone line that would like to testify. So we'll have the first person go now.
Hi, my name is Alexis Jones. I'm currently 15 years old and a sophomore in high school attending Southeast Career Technical Academy. I am severely profoundly deaf and wear brightly colored purple and pink hearing aids in both ears. I play varsity soccer and varsity flag football. I have above 4.0 GPA. I'm in student council, an ambassador student leader for my school, and I am in NHS as well. I'm also part of the U.S. Women's National Deaf Soccer team and have attended various camps, my first being when I was 14. I've testified on various different bills since I was 11, not to mention the hearing on this bill 2 years ago, and I'm excited to be able to testify on the issue again. Growing up, I've never been ashamed because I am deaf. In fact, I've always embraced it by showing them off and gladly answering any questions to anyone that might have about me being deaf. But I was also bullied for being so open about it, being called dumb because I had hearing disability, not being treated like the others, all because I looked a little different because I wear hearing aids. Kids will be kids, but the words they have said have stuck with me and will stick with me the rest of my life. Knowing that this type of terminology is still being used to refer to people with disabilities is discriminating, and when I hear it, it takes me right back to my elementary school days, crying alone in the bathroom because I wasn't understood. Deaf and dumb. This term was first coined by Aristotle, one of the most profound writers and literary philosophers of all time. He coined this term because of his belief that if deaf people could not use their voice in the same way as hearing people, then that meant they were incapable of learning, speaking, or even thinking the same way whereas normal people. This is quite simply put not true. Just because we have a disability doesn't mean that we're limited. We can do absolutely anything, and anything we put our mind to, except here. This can even be disproved by all of the incredible achievements I've done, all of it before the age of 16. Not to mention all the other deaf and hard of hearing people all over the world that have done absolutely remarkable things too. I strongly urge you to reconsider the terminology used in the Constitution and to pass this bill, not just for myself, but for not just for myself and the current deaf and hard of hearing people out there, but for the future generations, to ensure that they don't have to go through the same things that myself and others have went through. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Catherine Nielsen. I am the Executive Director of the Nevada Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities. I will start with when communicating about disabilities, diseases, and other health conditions, it's important to consider the unique needs and interests of people experiencing them as part of daily life. People with disabilities have been subject to the greatest violence and oppression of ableism. In order to eliminate ableism, a world must be built where all bodies and minds are respected, valued, and equal. The DD Act states that disability is a natural part of the human experience that does not diminish the right of individuals with developmental disabilities and other disabilities to live independently, to exert control and choice over their own lives, and to fully participate in and contribute to their communities through full integration and inclusion in economic, political, social, cultural, and educational mainstream of the United States society. That people with even the most significant disabilities are capable of independence, self-determination, productivity, integration, and inclusion in all areas of community life. People with disabilities have been at the heart of ableism for far too long. It's about time our Nevada Constitution is amended to provide respect to the individuals in which it represents. Thank you for your time, and thank you very much for the hard work of our representatives.
Good afternoon, Chair and the hardworking committee. My name is Dora Martinez, representing the Disability Peer Action Coalition. I am a person who happens to be blind with a beautiful service dog named Sarge. We've been coming to the legislative ever since long ago. We ditto the prior callers, and we thank Senator Dr. Titus for sponsoring this bill and championing the change of language for our Constitution. Disability rights is human rights, and we must be inclusive. You cannot be inclusive without disability. Cannot be diverse without disability. Equity and accessibility for all. Accessibility should not be an afterthought. Rather, it should be baked in from the get-go. And thank you so much for everything you all do, and take care. May the force be with you. Bye.
Hello, my name is Harrison Jones, and I'm turning 12 on Monday. Also, I'm hard of hearing. I was here 2 years ago testifying in support of the same bill. But before I begin, I want you to imagine you now. Imagine yourself in this situation. You have a disability and starting a new school. What is the people called you names just for having a disability? Having the deaf and dumb is still the conversation that makes me feel the same way. I have hard of hearing. I have a hard of hearing guide named Keith, who is mentioned a mentor to me. He has shared that he went through the same experience, similar name Colin, when he was younger, and he could not do something. Now he's a firefighter. When I was testifying 2 years ago, I said, I'm the opposite of deaf and dumb. I'm smart. And that's still true. I'm a theater major at Film and White Academy, and I get good grades. Also, I'm about to test for my brown belt in karate. I won third place in a foreign tournament, and I got accepted to a leadership program in my dojo. Does that sound dumb? Does that sound deaf and dumb to you? Thank you. Thank you for your time.
If you have just joined us and would like to testify in support of AJR 1, press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers wishing to testify in support at this time.
Thank you very much, Broadcasting. And I've heard that there's someone at Sawyer Building who would like to testify, but unfortunately we don't have a connection to the room. And so I just want to make sure I announce the phone number to call in. If anyone wants to call in, you would dial 888-475-4499. Again, you would dial 888-475-4499. When prompted, provide meeting ID 816-316-48268. Again, that's meeting ID 816-316-48268, and press the pound sign after the meeting ID. When prompted for a participant ID, press the pound sign. If anyone has problems trying to call in, the number to call is area code 775-684-6990. That's 775-684-6990. So I'd like to now go to opposition, or then we'll go to neutral, and if we'll go back to support just to make sure if someone was trying to call in that they get a chance. So I'd like to now go to opposition to AJR 1. I don't see anyone here in Carson City. Broadcasting, is there anyone on the phone lines in opposition to AJR 1?
To testify in opposition of AJR 1, press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers wishing to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you. Neutral. Anyone who's neutral on AJR 1 wants to be heard? I don't see anyone in Carson City. Broadcasting, anyone on the phone lines who is neutral and wants to be heard.
To testify neutral to AJR1, press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Thank you, Senator Titus and the committee for this opportunity to testify. My name is Beth Jones, and I'm the proud mom of 3 kids, 2 of whom you just heard from. For the past 25 years, I have been an advocate for people with special needs. First, as I earned my bachelor's and master's in special education, then as a mom when 2 of my children were identified as having a hearing loss, and now as executive director of Nevada Hands and Voices, an organization which supports families with children who are deaf and hard of hearing. 2 years ago, when I first learned of AJR1, I asked my kids if they'd like to testify, as I explained the term deaf and dumb was still used in the Constitution. They looked at me in shock, with tears in their eyes, and asked, "Is that how people talk about me?" Dumb is not a word I allow in my home or in my classroom when I was a teacher. Not about people and not about others. In the past 25 years of working with and learning from both children and adults who are deaf and hard of hearing or developmentally delayed, dumb or insane are not words I would ever use to describe these individuals. Resilient, hardworking, logical, creative, bright, these are the words I would use. As we all know, words matter. They can lift us up or tear us down. The word dumb is not allowed in our house, but I will say it here. The only dumb thing about that I would use in terms of this is that it has taken this long to rectify this outdated wording. Thank you for bringing this issue to light and for correcting it.
Thank you very much for your testimony, and it was great hearing from your kids as well. I'll label that as support testimony. I think we're still neutral, though, broadcasting, so I wonder if there's anyone else in the neutral category.
Chair, there are no more callers wishing to testify neutral at this time.
Thank you. And broadcasting, could I just check with you in case anyone else has called in support?
To testify neutral to AJR1, press star. To testify in support of AJR1, press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
So, Mr. Chair, I haven't.
There are no calls.
So, Robin Titus for the record, and Mr. Chair, I haven't, he still hasn't been able to call. So I will just tell you, thank you for allowing me to present this, and know that Mr. Campbell was a person who started that. He's testified 3 times in the past, so you can always look up his testimony. And I just want to thank you for this. And I've had constituents reach out to me and want to know why I'm wasting my time on this. Well, you heard the testimony on why. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the bill. I do remember hearing Mr. Campbell speak last session, and I apologize for the Zoom problem. But Mr. Campbell, if you can hear me, please, you can submit in writing, and I'd encourage all members to look at his testimony from last session. Thank you, Dr. Titus. With that, we will close the hearing on Assembly Joint Resolution 1. We will open the hearing on Assembly Bill 394. And I want to thank everyone for your patience. Thank you for joining us today, Assemblywoman. Thank you, Deputy Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Sabra Newby, Assemblywoman representing Assembly District 10, and that's spelled S-A-B-R-A-N-E-W-B-Y. Thank you for inviting us to present AB 394. With me, I have Mr. Mark Voloshin from the Secretary of State's office. I'll go quickly through the bill. There's really 2 things that AB 394 does. First, in Section 1, it requires that the Secretary of State develop regulations around a procedure in the case that an abstract or certification of results for any election is not prepared or transmitted as required currently in the NRS to the Secretary of State. So my understanding is that that hasn't happened to this point, but that portion of the bill requires the Secretary of State's office to develop regulations in case, for some reason in the future, it does. And then sections 2 and section 3 both have the same change, and that is to say that the counting of the ballots may be performed only once. And of course, there is an exception to that, actually 2 exceptions. And those exceptions are when there is an audit that is required or a recount is required or requested and followed through on. So those are the 2 changes in this. I'm not going to say the word because it's the kiss of death on a bill, but very short bill. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Voloshin in case he has anything to add.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Good afternoon, Deputy Secretary of State.
Good afternoon, Senator. Mark Voloshin, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections, for the record. I appreciate Assemblywoman Newby inviting me to come speak and provide any answers regarding the process and implementation of this bill. I do believe ultimately this, again, I don't want to speak for the interim committee that originally developed this bill, but the intent is one of a preemptive nature. Over the last election cycle, there were a number of different events that frankly were not anticipated in years previous. And this bill is part of an ongoing effort across the state government when it comes to elections to make sure that we address issues potentially before they become a problem during an election cycle. That being said, I'm available for questions.
Thank you very much. Members, are there any questions regarding Assembly Bill 394? Senator Daley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just a couple of quick questions. So similar to what Congress did on the Electoral College deal, they clarified that, the counting or the canvassing, if you will, for the vice president is ceremonial. The work's already been done. You're just getting them and counting them. There's no objections or anything. So this is similar to the county commission canvassing, and I know they've had it across the country where, people have refused to certify the election. A couple of places in Arizona. I think there was a hang up here in Nevada actually on one. So this is just kind of basically saying your job is ceremonial. Yes, you need to do it, and ceremonial is probably the wrong word, but it's an administrative thing. The work has already been done. You're just confirming that the information is there.
Thank you for the question, Senator. Chair, through you to...
Oh, please go directly to the Senator. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Voloshin, for the record. Yes, Senator, that is my understanding, that this is clarifying, not necessarily the ministerial role of the county commissioners, because that is in statute a certification of the vote, but really, again, directing, on the one hand, the Secretary of State to develop regulations in the event that the abstract of the canvass does not get completed in time. It really becomes a forcing function for us to work with the clerks and registrars to discuss what that process would look like, to make sure that from a legal standpoint we're prepared in the eventual, not in eventuality, but in the chance that it does occur, which again, I don't have a reason to believe it will, but really just to make sure that that's the case.
Please go ahead, Senator Daley.
And then the second question was on the counting, the only counting once. So what are we trying to solve on that one? Were there delay tactics or some things? I know most counties use the voting machines, and the ballots that come in get counted through a machine and various things. So I was just curious what problem we were trying to solve with that.
Thank you for the question, Senator. Mark Voloshin, for the record. So you're absolutely right. Most of the counties use the mechanical voting machines, but with the increase in the use of mail ballots, those mail ballots, as they arrive to each individual county, those are tabulated through a mechanical tabulator. It's my understanding, and again, I don't want to speak for the interim committee, but the idea is by limiting the number of attempts to count ballots, you're limiting the number of times that hands touch each of the mail ballots as well. The more counts that are done, the greater the opportunity for an individual to perhaps draw a line on it and inadvertently or deliberately create an overvote, which would alter the vote count for that specific race under our statutes. So by limiting it to only those events prescribed by statute, recounts, audits, and then no more, it would reduce the risk of any sort of either nefarious or accidental marking of a ballot.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Senator Daley? Minority Leader Seavers-Gansert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so this bill has some interesting language that's not language that's being changed. I'm kind of wondering why it's not cleaned up too, because I'm looking at section 3(2)B, and it talks about if the ballots in a container or box are found to exceed the number of names as indicated on the roster as having voted, the ballots must be replaced into the container or box, and a counting board officer shall, with his or her back turned to the container or box, draw out a number of ballots equal to the excess. The excess ballots must be marked on the back thereof with words, excess ballots are not counted, So I appreciate the explanations you've given for the language that you're changing, but it just seems like we have some antiquated language that's left in our voting statutes, and no one has addressed that.
We concur that that's a valid point. Sabra Newby for the record.
Yeah, so I know you have a lot of cleanup bills, and there's probably much more than that, but I've never seen that language before because I've never really delved into that statute. And I appreciate your explanation of why you count the ballots only once. And I guess that would have been an assumption that ballots are only counted once because that's our process, unless they're being audited. So I guess I'm still not sure if that language has another meaning to it or not, because if you have an audit or a recount, right, you're going to be counting the ballots again. So I guess I'm not understanding why we have to actually, why that's, that has always been the assumption, because that's how we tabulate our votes, is that you count them once. So there's the physical counting, but then there's also the tabulation of counting. So the language is, I guess, is a little bit confusing because of that. So like tabulating once. Yeah.
Thank you, Minority Leader, for the question. Mark Voloshin for the record. It is ambiguous in our current laws enough such that there has been significant and increasing pressure, not only across the nation but here in Nevada, for an initial count, that tabulation that you refer to. Ballots come in, and you would think that we would tabulate them once, and that would be that. But there's non-statutory audits that have been proposed as well. So I think this just simply clarifies and makes it, eliminates any doubt about why exactly, or what that process looks like. It's once to tabulate them, with the exception of a prescribed audit or prescribed recount, and there's not the ability necessarily for a group or an individual or an election official to say, well, I'm going to continue to do my own internal recounts without the direction of a court as prescribed in statute.
Thank you. If I can follow up. So
Please go ahead.
There's a difference between counting a ballot once or counting the ballots once. So your intent is that you want to count a ballot one time? Or is it the process of counting ballots? Do you see the difference?
Mark Voloshin for the record. I do. I believe I do. And I think the answer is yes to both. That the goal is to count those ballots once, and to really have that counting process in its entirety be conducted but once as well, unless directed by a court to conduct a recount. Or the audits that are already identified in statute.
So I don't know if the language needs to be a little bit clearer on that, because it's making sure that a ballot is counted one time, which I think is the most important thing, is that one vote, one ballot, one count, right? There's some other language in here too that talks about in section 3, the counting procedure must be public and continue without adjournment until completed. And, I don't know that we do that. We have had a stop and go process because we've had an increased number of mail-in ballots. So in section 3, number 1, I guess that's another question, is are we doing that? Is our counting procedure 100% public, and they continue to count without adjournment until completed as provided in statute NRS 293C.362.
Thank you for the question, Minority Leader Mark Voloshin, for the record. Excellent in catching that in 293C.362. It's also, you'll notice over in on page 3 in section 2 under 293, 363 as well, with those two both being for the elections and then for the city elections. To answer your question directly, yes, we make sure that the counting is a public process. That is something that our county election officials are keenly aware of. In regards to the continuing without adjournment, we've had a lot of discussion about that recently, and it's an ongoing discussion. Secretary Aguilar also has some thoughts on that as well, and I'm not going to speak for him now, but to simply say that the counting process as it relates from that first available day that we're able to start counting, 15 days prior to the election day, when we're able to start processing mail ballots, through to that really the seventh day rather, after the election, when we're required by statute to be done counting. The counting process that encompasses that time period does continue without adjournment. But I understand your concerns, and that's something that we continue to take a look at to see if we can't clarify both in statute and regulation going forward. It is the Secretary's intent that we do move forward with the tabulation of ballots in an expedited manner. With more mail ballots coming in, oftentimes now on Election Day, we've noticed that that's created a bit of a spike in those ballots arriving at the counties, and we certainly want to make sure that we can get the results to the electorate and really through the commissions in a timely manner. But yes, ma'am, that is something that we're continuing to look at.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Minority Leader. And maybe that's an area that we need to look on, trying to clean up some of these statutes, because I'm looking back at the dates of enactment, and certainly there are some recent changes, but some of them go back maybe back to the days of the punch card ballots too. So it might be that we need to amend some of these and try to clean them up. Any additional questions, members? Senator Krasner.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Just a quick question. In Section 1, Sub 3, subsection J, that new additional J down at the bottom of page 2, so it goes with 3, though. The regulations must prescribe, and then it says J, the procedure to be used if the abstract or certification of results for any election is not timely prepared or transmitted as required pursuant to the provisions of this title. So what is going to be the procedure to be used if the abstract or certification of results for any election is not timely prepared or transmitted as required?
Thank you for the question, Senator Krasner. May I go direct? I'm sorry,
Yes,
I
please
just
do.
did.
Please do.
I'm
Yes.
sorry. Thank you. I believe that what is going to happen is that the Secretary of State is going to develop those regulations and that procedure through the regular rulemaking process that's open to the public and reviewed by the Ledge Commission.
And just a quick follow-up to Mr.
Please go ahead.
Voloshin. So those procedures are not have not been created yet. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question, Senator Mark Voloshin, for the record. That is correct.
Thank you very much. Members, any additional questions? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you so much for the presentation. Appreciate you both presenting Assembly Bill 394.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With your permission, would you mind if I get to my own committee?
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here and presenting the bill. Thank you so much. And with that, we will now go to support for Assembly Bill 394. We'll start here in Carson City, and then we will go to the phone lines.
Good afternoon, beautiful Senate Ledge Ops Committee. For the record, my name is Emily Prasad Zamora, and that's spelled PERSAUD-ZAMORA. I'm the Executive Director of Silver State Voices that also leads the Let Nevadans Vote Coalition, and today we're in support of AB 394. The last few years have taught us that anything can happen, and AB 394 ensures that Nevada is prepared for any scenario. When there is uncertainty of how a process should work, it can lead to confusion. This confusion can be exploited by those who seek to undermine our democratic process. Therefore, it is imperative to have procedures in place should election results not be officially certified by or on the 10th day after an election. We also support the language that the counting of ballots can only be performed once, excluding audits, of course, or recounts. Election officials play a critical role and work tirelessly throughout the year to prepare for and administer elections. These policies work together to ensure Nevada's elections are certified promptly and efficiently. We urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Good afternoon. Please
Good
join me.
afternoon, Chair Ornshaw and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Annette Magnus, and I'm the Executive Director of Battleborn Progress. And I'm here today in support of AB 394 on behalf of our organization. The requirement for the Secretary of State to adopt a procedure to be used in the certification of results for any election that is not timely prepared is a significant change that would help to prevent delays in the certification process. This would not only help to ensure that the election results are certified in a timely manner, but it would also provide clear guidelines for how to handle any issues that may arise. Additionally, the provision that the counting of ballots can only be performed once, except as required during an audit or recount, is crucial to safeguard and to prevent any potential discrepancies or errors in the counting process. Ultimately, this bill would serve to strengthen our democracy and protect the fundamental right of every citizen to have their vote counted. I urge all legislators to support this measure and help ensure the integrity of our election system for generations to come. Please support this bill.
Thank you very much, Ms. Magnus. Thanks for your testimony. Good afternoon. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
My name is Isaac Tenorio, I-Z-A-C-K, Tenorio, T-E-N-O-R-I-O. With Strategy 360 on behalf of Campaign Legal Action Fund today, a national, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that works to protect and strengthen American democracy across all levels of government. We respectfully urge you to support AB 394 to protect the election administration and certification process from partisan manipulation and to ensure that it runs smoothly and efficiently for the people of Nevada. Nevada law currently is silent on the appropriate course of action should a county or city board fail to timely certify their results, thus leaving a gap hole in the current code. By requiring the Secretary of State to establish procedures for these circumstances, this bill will prevent partisan officials from creating doubt about the validity of election results. It will ensure that the Secretary of State is able to timely certify the election results and meet crucial deadlines, particularly in federal safe harbor deadline that governs presidential elections. It is vitally important to ensure the process for election administrators, especially those that occur in critical period after which voters cast their ballots but are awaiting final results. For this reason, Campaign Legal Action Center Action Fund respectfully urges the committee to support AB 394 to protect the post-election process that Nevada currently has in place. Thank you so much, and you have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tenorio. Anyone else in support here in Carson City? Okay, I don't see anyone broadcasting. Is there anyone on the phone lines who would like to speak in support of Assembly Bill 394?
To testify in support of AB 394, press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Again, to testify in support of AB 394, press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Aria Flores, A-R-I-A-F-L-O-R-E-S, and I am here on behalf of Chiefs of Nevada with the Let Nevadans Vote Coalition. We are in support of AB 394. AB 394 reassures our fellow Nevadans of our electoral process. Just last year, we saw several counties across the state bringing forth anti-democracy resolutions that only serve to obstruct and interfere our electoral process. Multiple methods of counting ballots not only creates delays, but it also increases the likelihood of errors and confusion, and would furthermore spread disinformation about the certification process in our state's election. AB 394 is a clear and effective procedure to strengthen our statewide electoral systems for an effective and secure count. I encourage you to support AB 394. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Carrie Dermick, and I'm the Nevada State Director at Albany's Local Action. We are also a proud member of the Let Nevada's Vote Coalition. We are here today in strong support of AB 394. In the summer of 2022, I started working with local activists in Nye County after the Nye County Commission started the process of transitioning their election system to paper ballots and hand counting. When voters showed up in Nye County on the first day of early vote, many voters were confused to learn that they had to request to use a voting machine instead of freely being given the option. Nye's transition to hand counting and limited machines caused confusion among their voters. Nevada's elections are not an experiment and should not be treated as such. AB 394 would guarantee that the Secretary of State's office adopt a procedure to be used if the certification of results for any election that is not timely prepared, and make sure that counting of ballots can only be performed once, except of course as required during an audit or a recount. We strongly encourage you to support AB 394, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony.
There are no more callers wishing to testify at this time.
Thank you. I'd like to now go to opposition to Assembly Bill 394. I'll start here in Carson City, and then I will go to the phone lines.
Barbara Jones, for the record. Good afternoon.
Ms. Jones, I'm sorry, I don't think your microphone is on.
The light's on.
Is it on? Okay, I couldn't hear you.
Can you hear me better?
Now I can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Senator Shaw and committee. It's been a good afternoon, despite the hail and some other issues. But I'm here. I just found out about this bill. I can't believe I missed it. I've been tracking, trying to keep up with the election bills. I see some good things in it, but some confusing. And, of course, I'm for the counting procedure to be public and without adjournment until completion. One county didn't even know where their votes were being counted, and it didn't seem like they had much observation. Also, it still says to me the first opening was a permanent regulations for the Secretary of State to regulate the control, and that bothers me, the increased control, it looks like even here, of the counties and cities. I know there has to be some regulations, but if I saw something in here, and I don't, unless I missed it, that would protect the cities and counties to choose their own system more, I would be for that. So I'm going to have to say please vote no on this, because I see it as not really solving much. I'm not really understanding everything in it that is good. I don't see much. And the bottom line for me was, I said, okay, who did this come from? And it's this assembly bill. And every assembly bill they passed on regulations, I was totally against. So I guess I'd have to add this to the list. The ones, I think there were 7 election bills so far, and that doesn't include the ones they wouldn't hear, which I think really could have helped us and the state of Nevada. So that's my comment for today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Jones, for your testimony. Don't see anyone else in opposition, so I'll go to the phone lines now. Assembly Bill 394, broadcasting. Is there anyone on the phone lines in opposition to Assembly Bill 394?
Testify in opposition of AB 394, press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Hello, am I being heard now?
Yes, please state your name for the record and proceed.
Yes. My name is Jane B. Davis, and I'm from Pahrump, which is Nye County. I am here today to support the Nye County Clerk, Mark Kemp. I wish to register my strong opposition to AB 394 for the following reasons. One, I believe Nye County is being discriminated against because we choose a parallel manual verification of the tabulation process, hand counting of paper ballots. We oppose machines and we choose paper ballot voting. I believe this is another way to eliminate paper ballots that Nye County voters choose to use. I believe this is another step toward ranked choice voting that I strongly oppose and consider bad for election integrity. I believe this is another step to curb county clerks should their voters desire paper ballots and the clerks wish to use a parallel manual verification in the hand counting paper ballot process. I believe this is another step in controlling elections, but not improving the process. In conclusion, this bill destroys a check and balance system that provides secure elections. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Broadcasting, is there anyone else on the phone lines?
Yes, Chair, one moment.
Am I being heard?
Yes, please state your name for the record and proceed.
Hello?
Yes, please state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you. My name is Ellen Gifford. When I read a bill, I try to ascertain the intent and purpose and what's been written in that bill.
Excuse
and
me,
what
Miss.
it's meant to accomplish.
Miss, I'm sorry.
In reading AB,
Miss, could you repeat your name? It was very faint, and I don't think we heard you for our record.
I'm so sorry. All right, it's Ellen Gifford.
Perfect. Please proceed.
Okay?
Yes.
Thank you. In reading AB 394, I see that it proposes to amend NRS 293-247, which states that the Secretary of State shall prescribe the forms for a declaration of candidacy in any petition which is filed pursuant to the election laws of the state. The NRS goes on to list the items that the Secretary of State's regulations must prescribe. This bill adds an item to this list that addresses an additional procedure that the bill's author believes should be addressed by the Secretary of State. It's easy to understand the intent here. This is an addition to that existing list of what the regulations must prescribe. The bill also proposes to amend NRS 293-363 and 293-C-362, both of which address in detail how the counting board shall prepare paper ballots for counting. The bill proposes adding a Section 3 to these statutes, which states, except as otherwise required during an audit or recount, the counting of ballots may be performed only once. It is not easy to understand the intent of this amendment. In fact, the statement just pops up out of nowhere as if it were misplaced. Is this a general statement that applies to all ballots? If this applies only to paper ballots, I find myself leaning toward assuming the intent of this amendment is to prevent the hand count such as the one conducted in Nye County as an independent verification of the tabulation process. And without an explanation of this amendment, I must oppose AB 394. I must also say that paper ballots are anything but an experiment. It's how everyone voted before the pandemic. Thank you so much.
Chair, there are no more callers wishing to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you, Broadcasting. I'd like to now go to neutral. Anyone who's neutral on AB 394 and wants to be heard? Don't see anyone in Carson City. Broadcasting anyone on the phone lines who is neutral.
To testify neutral to AB 394, press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no calls wishing to testify neutral.
Thank you very much. I know we lost Assemblywoman Newby, but Deputy Secretary of State Washington, do you care to make any closing comments? No. Thank you for co-presenting the bill. With that, I will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 394. And members, I know this is a little out of the ordinary, but I believe there was a witness that Senator Titus had who we had some problems getting him connected via Zoom, but I believe he is connected now. So I would like to reopen the hearing on AJR 1 of the 81st session just to allow that witness to speak to AJR 1 if he is on. Good evening, sir. I think we can see you. Please state your name for the record and proceed. Please state your name for the record and proceed, sir.
Yes, my name is Andrew Campbell. And
we can hear you. Please.
I'm a resident.
We can hear you. Please proceed.
Yes, my name is Andrew Campbell, and I'm a resident of Fallon, Nevada, a citizen of Nevada for the past 15 years. And I'm here for the matter regarding persons and vocabulary and language related to them in a more respectful way. So I'm not sure if this is the right moment to be speaking.
Yes, please go ahead, sir. Yes, it is. Thank you for your patience.
Okay. Yes. I contacted Dr. Titus a couple of years ago and received some support, which seems to be going through now that she's senator. And I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to see come to fruition a hope I've long had since I first took the test to get my licensure as an educator here in the state of Nevada. So at this time, I'm just asking for your continued support and conclusion of this kind of long process.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate your testimony in the past as to how you discovered this in the Constitution and you reached out to then Assemblywoman Titus. Members, any questions for Mr. Campbell? I'm not seeing any questions. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much.
And since I've reopened the hearing on AJR 1 of the 81st session, broadcasting just on the off chance there's anyone who wishes to speak on AJR 1 on the phone lines who might not have had a chance, either support, opposition, or neutral.
If you would
Or
like
here
to
in
testify
Carson
at
City,
any
but-
position, if you would like to testify at any position to AJR 1, press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no callers wishing to testify at this time.
All right, thank you, broadcasting. Thank you, Mr. Campbell, for joining us. With that, we will reclose the hearing on AJR 1 of the 81st session. And last thing on our agenda is public comment. So I don't see anyone here who wants to make public comment. Broadcasting anyone on the phone lines who wishes to make public comment.
If you would like to provide public comment, press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no callers wishing to provide public comment at this time.
Right, well, thank you, members. Thank you to the staff, and we are adjourned.